Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. All right, so UFC fights are over right now, but if you put in your deposit, you can get up to $1,000 in free plays if you go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, if you're a new customer. All right, a man who is not new to the city, a man who certainly is not new to the landscape of college athletics, Mr. Anthony Gimino is back in here. Hello, Anthony.
Well, hello, Mike.
How have you been, first and foremost? We haven't had you on in a couple months. Fill the kind folks in on what you've been up to.
It's been a good couple months, right?
So I guess for you, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we did manage to get a few college football magazines out at Lindy's, and of course now it's like, well, I mean, it's not blown up for next season, but actually, my first reaction to a lot of this stuff was, how is it going to affect the magazine business? Because I'm just selfish and think about myself all the time, but it's probably good. It's probably good for the magazine business.
All right, tell people real quickly what you do again for Lindy's.
So I'm the senior editor of Lindy's. So these days we put together 3 different college football editions: a national edition, the SEC edition, and a Big Ten edition. You might remember a time when Lindy's also did an ACC and a Big 12 and a Pac-10/Pac-12.
Right.
Even a Mountain West edition for a few years. Of course, all those
wow.
Those have fallen off by the wayside. And guess who's left?
Yeah.
The SEC.
The SEC. All right, so let's get right to it. When you heard the news that UCLA and USC are leaving the conference by 2024, what were just your initial thoughts?
Well, crazy. I mean, it's unbelievable to think you can wake up on a Thursday and by later that night, USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten. I mean, that's just insane.
Right.
I think my first reaction was sadness, probably followed by anger. I don't know if I went through all the 5 stages.
The grieving stages.
But first of all, just sad. It's all the tradition. It's all the rivalries. It's all the colors. It's everything about the Pac-10 and Pac-12 that at least we grew up on that is going away. And I mean, you can make the case that USC, since Pete Carroll, hasn't been particularly good in football. UCLA hasn't been particularly good in football for a long time either. But they're still the Pac-12. They're still the Pac-10. They're still the Pac-8. They're still that group.
This is still Keith Jackson.
What's that?
This is still Keith Jackson.
Oh my God, it's Keith Jackson in the Rose Bowl and the San Gabriel Mountains and all that stuff. And I mean, the Rose Bowl's already been devalued over the last 10, 20 years, and now it's going to almost become irrelevant.
Let me ask you this, Anthony, because I've had a lot of people ask me this, because everybody, generally likes to assign blame. I like to assign blame. But should Kaliakov have known about this? Because these negotiations, I was talking with a couple of people down by the U of A, and they said that I thought they made an interesting point. The fact that these negotiations were essentially done, everything was done by the time it leaked. There weren't just 2 or 3 people involved in this, in these negotiations. There had to have been a couple dozen people at the very least. Shouldn't he have had some kind of idea that maybe this was going down or something might be happening?
Yeah, I mean, you would like to think so. I know what you're saying. It's the same thing about Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. Big 12 was completely blindsided by this, same way the Pac-12 was. So I think when there's that much money involved and that much at stake, it buys a lot of silence.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the league didn't help itself when they put out that statement on Thursday night,
right,
where they basically admitted to not being blindsided.
Right.
I don't believe great opportunity for them to spin something forward, but they blew that too.
In my amateur take, I don't believe that the Pac-12 can sustain without the 2 UCL, without the 2 LA schools. And you see that maybe they're going to try to make a go of it with 10, but I think it was your guy John Wilner or John Canzano, I can't remember, who put that the TV contract will probably go from about 500 to 300 million just by losing those 2 schools. That's 200 million in revenue that I just don't think that you can sustain amongst 10 schools when you thought that you'd be getting 500 instead of 300.
No, I mean, that certainly tracks with money wise. That's like it's like a 40% hit.
Right.
And you don't reclaim that by adding San Diego State. You don't reclaim that by adding Fresno State or Boise or whatever it might be. You just can't get that back. Plus the Pac-12, I mean, there would be an admission of lowering their standards.
Right.
For years, they have given the great big stiff arm to San Diego State, saying, "Oh, your academics isn't very good. We're too good for you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want you." But the flip side is, whatever this transition period is, it has to be seen as an opportunity. So what does that mean? It means if you're the Pac-12, are you going to sit there and get eaten up by the Big 12? Are you going to try to gobble up the best of the Big 12 and make your own third best league in the country? Or are you going to do some great merger? I mean, you got to look at it from all those angles.
All right, so you look at the Big 12 is the one that's getting a lot of play right now, whether that's a merger. There's been reports, too, that there could be a meeting tomorrow where the discussion of adding Arizona, ASU, and the two mountain schools. That, to me, and again, I'm just speaking from somebody that doesn't have all the numbers, but that, to me, actually makes quite a bit of sense because if you add Arizona and ASU, you get the Phoenix market, obviously. And trust me, I understand football is king, but you're adding a national entity in U of A basketball. Then if you add the mountain school or, Utah, Colorado, you add those two new media markets and you bring in a top 15 program in Utah. Football's not great, but let me ask you this. Is the Big 12 with Utah any better or any worse than the Pac-12 is currently in football?
From a competitive standpoint, I like that. I like those 4 Pac-12 schools going over.
Right.
Remember, not starting next school year, not this school year coming up, but 23-24, the Big 12 is adding BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. So assuming Texas and Oklahoma have not got out of their contracts yet, that's going to be, a 14-team league?
Mm-hmm.
And how soon you're going to add the other ones? Could that be your next mega league, at least in the interim? But to me, the Big 12, you got to look at it from the money point.
Right.
You talked about the Phoenix market. Okay, kind of. It's obviously a top 10 national market, but it's ASU. Does ASU really move the needle in Phoenix? Not
right.
Really.
Right.
So does it add value to the Big 12? Well, it adds value in terms of what we think of. Competitiveness. It would be a hell of a basketball league for sure.
Right.
That would be fantastic. I mean, you throw in Houston and Cincinnati in there.
Well, Anthony, you could make the case that if Arizona goes into the Big 12, you can easily make that case that it would become the best basketball conference in the country.
You got, if everybody stays put, you've
right.
got Kansas, you've got Baylor, you got Texas Tech, you've got Houston, you got Cincinnati, still got West Virginia.
You got Arizona, you got Okie State. I mean, down in I'm just throwing that one in there.
No, but it's a deep league. It's really good at the top. It would be really good. But would the Big 12 having to add these other programs, will that force the existing teams to take less money because they have to share that TV money with more programs?
Right.
It does not matter. That's what this all comes down to, Mike, is, we can talk about competition and tradition and all that. It's, at the end of the day, it's really a math problem, and that's really boring.
Right. Because
it's going to be revenue divided by number of teams. And to find that perfect number for the league, for the league as a whole, for the individual programs, for the TV networks, you got to find that sweet spot. So is it worth taking more teams to build your league and build your brand while the programs are making less money per year on their media deal?
Anthony, have I told you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
So much so that I signed up right away.
All right, so you're not a new customer, so this doesn't apply to Anthony Gimino. But if you are out there and you are a new customer and you're thinking, what's all this about? Here's what you do. You go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, you put it out in deposit, and guess what? You get $1,000 in free plays then, if that's all you got to do. 21 and up. Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Anthony is a big Boston Red Sox fan. Anthony, would you encourage people on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, in a vacuum to support the Red Sox or to go against the Red Sox?
Well, after their horrible start, they've been really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'd bet on the upside because they've got some pitchers coming back in the second half of the season.
All right, there you go. DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Okay, let me ask you this, because you've been obviously following this a long time. When you look back at the Larry Scott tenure, because I still feel that we need to still talk about it, because I think that's part of the reason we're here. What went wrong? And again, I'm asking something where you could give a lot of different answers, but what went wrong with the Larry Scott era? When you look at it and say, man, that was just bad. What are the things that come to your mind?
TV deal number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, probably.
Right.
Yeah, it was bad from the start with the whole DirecTV fiasco, and it never got any better. Right. Then he pushed, the current contract doesn't expire until after the Big Ten one does, right?
Right, correct.
They could have structured that so they got in line in front of the Big Ten. Maybe Fox would have made a great deal with the Pac-12, and then USC and UCLA don't go anywhere.
Right.
So I think there's multiple failures along the timeline of the TV contract, the whole situation.
I think Ricky Garrett makes an interesting point that a lot of people, and you certainly can't accuse Robert Robbins of this because he's a big sports fan, obviously. But I wonder how many of these presidents, and again, I mean, I don't know that there's really an answer. How many of these presidents really care about athletics? I mean, because these people re-upped Larry Scott. You got to remember, it's not like Larry Scott signed a 16-year deal and by year 2 they're like, man, only 14 more years. I mean, he got extensions out of this.
He got extensions. He got $50 million or whatever.
Yeah,
crazy amount of money to do what he did, which was lead the Pac-12 down the path of destruction. So yeah, I get that point. I think there's probably a lot of the Pac-12 thought we're okay. Maybe they thought they were just untouchable.
Right.
We're the conference of champions.
Right.
Nobody's the USC and UCLA aren't going to leave for the Big Ten or any other conference. Where would they go? Right.
Right.
And they rebuffed opportunities to expand in the past. Again, the whole San Diego. I go back to my San Diego State analogy where, oh yeah, you're not good enough for us. But they could have made a big, bold move 10 years ago and gotten some of the best of the Big 12 and formed their own super conference, but they didn't.
I think our good friend John Schuster made an interesting point, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but I believe he said that Lute Olson, and I think this might have even been public knowledge, had mentioned before that if San Diego State had joined the Pac-12, that they could have been real problems there athletically. I mean, so that kind of goes into what you're thinking. The other thing, too, that I thought was fascinating about moving on to Kliavkoff is that when Kliavkoff took over, one of the first things he said is, we're good. We're not looking to expand. And in this day and age, when you've got the SEC, which is the power of all power in college athletics right now, when they're looking to expand with the right fit, it just struck me as a little tone deaf's probably not the right word, but that's not the way that the landscape of college athletics is working right now. This is an arms race right now. And to say that seemed a little tone deaf to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, the great realignment of 10, 12 years ago happened, and then it kind of calmed down for a while. There's some minor moves here and there. And then the whole Texas-Oklahoma thing opened everything up. And to think that would be the end of it doesn't sound very logical to me.
Right.
We're kind of still in the toddler phase of this. I don't even really call it realignment. It's just consolidation is what it is.
Right.
It's kind of the unalignment. But yeah, the big schools are consolidating their power. And you might be eventually asking me like, okay, what's the end game of all this? The end game of all this is that there's going to be 50 schools left standing. I don't know how many, but there's going to be winners and losers, and you better get in line and make the right decision right now, or else you're going to be a loser.
Well, that's why I think that Arizona, no matter what Arizona decides, they got to move here, because like you just said, you don't want to get stuck out in the cold, especially when you don't have a massive football, like a school like Oregon, for example, will always have a conference that wants to take it. But if you're Arizona, yes, you got basketball, but that's about 1/4 of what football brings in. To me, you've got to get aligned with somebody right here. And again, it doesn't need to be tomorrow, but I think speed is of the essence right here.
Yeah, I kind of do. You don't want to be left behind. There's no, this is not. I hate to say this. It's not a time for loyalty. We've already shown there's proven that there's no loyalty anywhere, right?
Right.
USC and UCLA, see ya, goodbye. No loyalty there at all. So what does Arizona have to be loyal about? If they get, again, it's going to take both sides. I might want to date a supermodel, but it's not going to happen, right? Unless supermodel says, sure, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe Arizona wants to go to the Big 12. They still have to wait to get invited. They still have to make their case that they're good enough.
Right.
With some kind of package that it benefits the Big 12. Don't know if that's going to happen. But you've got to explore that to its furthest capabilities. You got to look at all the options. But there's a lot of stuff out of Arizona's control. They don't know what the Pac-12 is going to do. The only thing Arizona can do right now is make its case, talk to everybody, and try to make the best decision they can.
One thing I don't want to have happen, though, and again, I realize beggars can't be choosers. I don't want to. I've had a bunch of people ask me, well, what about the SEC? I want Arizona football to be able to be competitive at some point. The last thing that Arizona football needs in 2 years is to look at a possible schedule of Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Auburn, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. We've gone through the 1-win season. It stinks. It's not fun. The SEC doesn't strike me as realistic, and honestly, the Big Ten really doesn't either.
I think you need to reevaluate some of the people you're hanging out with, Mike.
It's true. That's true. I'm off.
We don't know much going on right now, but we do know Arizona's not going to be asked to join the SEC.
What about the Big Ten? A lot of people. By the way, Gary Lewis. This actually is 5 now, Anthony, not just 4. Gary Lewis said, I'm grateful for Anthony's U of A coverage over many decades. Gary, you're right. AG is the best right here.
Multiple decades. Yes.
Multiple decades. Yes. Hey, don't age Anthony right there. But the Big Ten, though, that doesn't seem like a fit either for a couple reasons. First of all, it views itself as an academic conference. And it views itself as a football conference. Now, you could debate the merits on how good their football really is, but the tenor of Arizona athletics doesn't seem like a natural fit in the Big Ten.
And the Big Ten's not asking. They're not going to ask.
Right.
I mean, if we know we're kind of, according to a lot of the national reports and whatnot. So, for the Pac-12 stuff, I always go to John Wilner, right? Mm-hmm. For national stuff, I go to Dennis Dodd at CBS. So, fortunately, many decades I have known both those guys. So that's
correct.
Most of my news these days.
John Wilner's in your wedding, by the way. Very cool.
Yes, he is. I've got pictures to prove it.
Oh, I've seen him.
According to Dennis's reporting and others, Big Ten's waiting on Notre Dame. What's Notre Dame going to do?
Right.
Are they going to give up their independence? If they do, they're not going to the ACC because ACC right now is half of the money that the Big Ten could offer. So it's Big Ten or stay independent.
Right.
So the Big Ten wants to see how that domino falls and then maybe get in line between Oregon and Washington. But again, Oregon and Washington, it may boost your league from a brand, from competition standpoint. Each program, though, is probably going to have to give up a cut of their TV media money.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in Washington won't bring in as much as they take, as the state would be.
Where is Oregon as far as just luster of athletic programs, what they bring? Because a lot of people, I think they look at Nike and they're just like, well, or Oregon's big time wherever. Where is Oregon on the national stage as far as, I guess, luster, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, last 10, 15 years, they're the elite West Coast program.
Right.
Now, if USC under Lincoln Riley got to where we think they might get, USC is that program and is always going to be that program. But lately it's been Oregon. They have the buzz. They've had good teams, football, basketball, other sports as well at times. But I think they're the ones that kind of do move a little bit of the needle in terms of national interest.
Right.
Do they have the big enough TV based market? No, not like LA market for sure. Nobody, I mean, Stanford's its own separate, unique kind of thing, but nobody in the Bay Area really cares about college sports.
Right.
So you've got that big TV market, you've got that whole big demographic. Nobody cares about college sports.
Right.
In Oregon, they care. Seattle, they care. But is it big enough to justify it? It's back to the math problem. Are you going to add as much as you take away when you start dividing by two more teams?
Derek Pivko, I think, speaks for a lot of people, and I've had this question asked as well. Is there any way that Arizona can ditch ASU and go in with somebody else, or is Arizona ASU a package deal?
That's a great question. If I was Arizona, I would, again, explore all the options. If I'm Arizona, I don't have to be a package deal.
Right.
But does having that package make you more attractive? Yes, because of the Phoenix market.
Right.
So you probably do want to attach yourself to ASU, but if there was an opportunity to split and the Board of Regents and all the people who have to kind of at least sign off on this a little bit, say it's okay, I would go my own way if that was a possibility.
I don't think, and Doug Allen, I think, makes an interesting point about Stanford here. One of the reasons I don't think that a major merger can really happen, I just can't imagine Stanford in the Big 12 with the way that it views itself academically. Am I wrong there?
Big Ten loves the academics. You mentioned
right.
that they love those universities. I think Stanford's more likely, if the Pac-12 kind of falls apart, dissolves. I think they're more likely to go independent.
Right. Basically become a Notre Dame light.
Kind of, yeah.
Right.
And of course, we're just talking football. They bring value to pretty much whatever they do and all the Olympic sports, for example. I mean, they're always. I don't think they finished number one in the Directors' Cup ratings in the last couple of years. That's been Texas. But, they had a run of 12, 14 years of being the best overall athletic program. Some of that's sports nobody really cares about, but they do bring great value elsewhere.
Now, the ACC is kind of you've seen things bandied back and forth because the ACC, obviously, you've got Clemson, you've got Florida State, obviously, you've got football entities that matter. Basketball-wise, it's the best conference in the country. Again, totally realize, because whenever I talk up basketball, people always say, basketball doesn't matter. It does matter, just not nearly to the extent that football does. The ACC, do they survive this? Intact, or eventually are you going to see Clemson in the SEC?
Clemson, Florida State, Miami, those are all going to be very attractive to the SEC if they want to fire some more shots. So I just don't see where the ACC can add. I don't think there's a lot of addition for them. Right. Where at least the Big 12 and the Pac-12 make some sense geographically. It's a pretty nice footprint. Those schools are already a little bit aligned. So I think the chance to become number 3, you're going to have the SEC and Big Ten. They're going to be the big 2. Right. Who's going to be the third best conference? Who can at least have a little bit of a seat at the table? I think it's going to be some combination of Big 12, Pac-12, again, merger, one side rating the other, don't know. But I think the ACC is more likely to be carved out. All right. One thing that's not going to ever be carved up is the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Code word PHNX. All right. Anthony likes the Boston Red Sox to continue their winning ways right here. So if you look at Anthony and you refer to him as the sage of the Southwest, as I did today in the tweet, you might want to go on there. Get new customers only. You put in your deposit, you can get $1,000 in free plays. 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling issue, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Keep your toes in the water because you got basketball and football right around the corner. Anthony's thing right there with Lindy's senior editor right there. Okay, Anthony, now let's talk about what Big 12 hoops would be like if Arizona was in. Yes, please.
and again, I'm not the guy that always beats up Bill Walton. Bill Walton to me has, and I can't believe this has become a talking point here. Bill Walton to me is kind of indicative of a little bit of the problem that the Pac-12 has had. And here's my example: when Arizona UCLA are basically playing at a 9:00 West Coast tip-off that nobody's seeing. And on top of that, you've got Bill Walton, who's fine for an Arizona-Oregon State game, who's fine for a Washington-UCLA. But when you've got the two Titans clashing and the talk is about sunsets and saguaros, that just isn't – I never liked that. If you go to the Big 12 and you're playing in fog, Allen Fieldhouse, 5:00 on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you're going to be getting the A team there and you're going to be treated as the A team. You're not going to be getting all this side garbage.
I want to see one Bill Walton called Arizona-Kansas game. Go on.
Okay.
Just one. Then we can call it good. We've got it on tape. We'll call it good. But yeah, that league would be great. That was like, when all this kind of went down Thursday, that was the first thing. It's like, hey, what does this do for Arizona? What does it do for recruiting? Can Arizona basketball still get in 5 stars? Like, if they go to the Big 12, that league is off the charts.
Right. I totally agree. All right, Tony Barber makes it up. What do you guys think of CBS Paramount making a big move for the West Coast team? Big 12 gets your top 6, Pac-12 with, and then a few teams like Tennessee, Kentucky. That's not going to happen. Tennessee, Kentucky, they're Missouri. They're not leaving the SEC. They got a good thing going right there. So,
what if Missouri gets kicked out?
I mean, they don't really.
If you're the SEC, remember these leagues aren't obligated. The schools are committed to the league.
Right.
The leagues aren't committed to the schools.
Right.
What if the SEC cleared out Missouri and Vanderbilt?
Right.
And they added Clemson and Miami.
That's called an addition.
Those are things that cannot be ruled out at the moment. And same thing for the Big Ten. I don't know who the Big Ten would kick out. They added Rutgers for a reason, and that reason was a stupid TV market, not for competitive. I don't know. There's more shakeups coming, obviously, and it's not just always going to be additions.
Right.
Some of these leagues could kick out. I mean, you remember like before Bill Snyder got good with Kansas State, they weren't going to survive. They weren't going to survive in what at the time was the new Big 12.
Right.
It's
all about the coach.
It's all about the coach. So yeah, we talked about, hey, the Big 12 or the Pac-12 may add. There may also be a lot of subtraction.
Right, for sure. All right, Anthony, before we sign off here, what would you, if you were to put on your goggles right now, your AG, take off the spectacles, put on the forward-seeking goggles right there.
Kind of goggles, yeah.
What would you, if you were Arizona, what would Anthony Gimino's next step be? Senior editor of Lindy's College Football, by the way.
I'm not going to put my faith in the Pac. I mean, I think the best possible scenario is for the Pac-12 to get better.
Right.
And that means expansion. That means maybe you're adding TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston, SMU.
Right.
I mean, you're capturing some big Texas markets. To me, that would be great to see the Pac-12, whatever the final number ends up being, that would be what I would hope to see. Mm-hmm. But am I trusting the Pac-12 to do that, to make those moves that allow that to happen, to get the TV deals, to get some combination of ESPN, Fox, CBS, whatever, on board for a somewhat competitive TV media rights deal that's not as good as a SEC or the Big Ten, but at least it keeps me in the game.
Right.
Is that going to happen? Maybe not. I am going to, if I'm Arizona, I am very intrigued by the possibility of what the Big 12 has to say.
I would be very intrigued as well. Real quick,
I do like Arizona's in the mountains moving over to the Big 12. It just kind of seems right to me. I don't know if it's going to work money-wise, but I think that's just a really good fit.
Let me ask you this, because I see a lot of people, and I was looking at Baylor, I was looking at all the programs. Why is Baylor maybe the best combination of basketball and football in the country right now in Waco, Texas?
Good coaches.
It's all about the coach.
What about the coach? Yeah, why was a school in Manhattan, Kansas really good in football for 10, 12 years?
Bill Snyder.
Bill Snyder.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, AG. Well, again, really thank you for coming on. Everybody, this is awesome. Up to 125 live views right now. You guys are all fantastic. Anthony brings the knowledge. He brings the viewers. You guys are great. Everybody on here, thank you so much. Anthony, before football comes back on, I know you're semi out of the game locally, but you know what? We're going to lure you back in here for another AZ Wildcats podcast. Can I get your word on this at some point?
As long as we're talking like actual football,
right?
Like football on the field.
Yeah. So that's the deal.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. All right, everybody. Again, thanks so much, AG. As always, really appreciate you, buddy. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, you've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. Talk to you guys tomorrow.